Hello, here we are on January 27th, 2012, and this is Minister Edward J. Robin here today to just give you a little update about what's taken place with my endeavor to get false oath judges to give respect and recognition to my particular Christian faith and beliefs. I was before a court in Jasper yesterday, January 26, 2012, and I, in the process before going there, had made complaints against the RCMP officer at Constable Knight. Made complaints to the RCMP Public Complaints Commission with reference to Constable Knight's activity on March 7th, pulling myself and Sheldon City over in our unregistered, uninsured, unlicensed ecclesiastical chariot as we were traveling. I was endeavoring to take Sheldon to his father's deathbed. His father was extremely ill, and I was trying to aid him, officially performing the functions of my calling. The officer was informed of that, and he obstructed me and seized the car, charged me with driving without insurance, registration, and license, and also found a small amount of marijuana in the car. So when you place a complaint against an RCMP officer, they can't serve as witness against you in court until that complaint is addressed and whether they are exonerated for whatever you're complaining about. My particular complaint was, of course, he was not recognizing my activity and authority as a Christian minister, and thereby violating 176 of the Criminal Code by obstructing me, as well as acting as a general nuisance, violating 180 of the Criminal Code and 423 of the Criminal Code by intimidating me to obstruct me and prevent me from practicing my faith and beliefs. I have put in a complaint against 7 provincial court judges claiming that they have all intimidated me to violate the commands of God, which they certainly have no authority in the Christian monarchy as defended by the Queen, defender of the Christian faith, to do so. They got zero authority to intimidate. The lady that I wrote to, her name was Gail Vickery. She's the Chief Justice here in Alberta. And I told her what was taking place, and I told her that this was intimidating to me, and I wanted these men disqualified from my case. They were, all 7 of them. One of those men's names was Vaughn Myers. In 2000, Vaughn Myers was a prosecutor for the federal government. I was charged with possession of marijuana, and he was proceeding against me as the federal crown. And when I wrote him and said, I'm coming to court and I'm bringing the King James Bible, I'm going to ask the judge if he had the authority to take away God's gift, and I'm going to be asking for your analysis from you because I suspect you use cocaine, and I want to ensure that you're competent to conduct this prosecution and not under the influence of a drug. Well, that prosecutor in a few days phoned me up at home and told me not to come to court. He'd stayed the charges, and when I asked why, he hung up. I phoned back and I told him I'm coming to court anyways, and I want my pot, my scales back if you're not proceeding with this. He told me, if you come to court, I'll have you charged with contempt. He did not want me to appear in that courtroom and bring up the Bible and the urinalysis, because I strongly believe that he is a cocaine user, and that does influence his ability to practice law, either on one side of the bench as a prosecutor or sitting up on the bench judging law. They're still both incompetent because of the use of that drug. So when I appeared yesterday, the man who used to be a federal crown prosecutor 10 years ago, or pardon me, 12 years ago, is now a provincial judge. Already 6 times he sat on my case, disqualified. The last 2 times, I told him I don't consent. The last time before yesterday, he wrote it down on the record, I didn't consent. If he's disqualified, he has no jurisdiction whatsoever to be making a court date for me unless I consent to it. I didn't consent. Yesterday, as soon as I walked into the courtroom, he acknowledged me and he said, Madam Clerk, I've got a conflict in this matter. I'm disqualified from this case and I can't proceed. Out of his own mouth. And then he said, we're going to set a court date and we're going to adjourn this and we'll have it in the future. I told him I don't consent to any of your orders. It violates my religious beliefs. And I asked him if it was his intent to intimidate me. And I had a complaint against him for doing just that to the chief judge, that he was disqualified. And he again offered me the date, and I said I don't consent to that. He again offered me the date after a long pause. I said I don't consent to that, goodbye. And I walked out of the courtroom and nothing was said. I think that opens up the opportunity for both cases that I have to be quashed, because judges that don't have jurisdiction, that are disqualified, don't get to set dates unless you consent. I did not consent. So I just wanted to inform you shortly what took place yesterday with regards to the court date that I had. And that's pretty much summed it up. I'm now going to be getting further agreements with Gail Vickery, the head judge, as to regards to the actions of this disqualified judge, who every time I see him recognizes he's disqualified and says so. Yet there he is, still sitting on the bench when I show up. They know I'm coming. He does not deal with the Jasper Courthouse. He deals with Stony Plain, St. Albert, and Sherwood Park. That's his circuit. How he ended up on Jasper when I'm showing up there and he's disqualified is beyond coincidence. That was intentional. You may ask, why would they intentionally put a disqualified judge in front of you for another court case involving marijuana? We're also complaining about the false oath judges that most certainly and assuredly do have false oaths, violating the Governor General's Act of 1947, Section 10 and 11, violating the British North American Act, Schedule 5, violating the Federal Oaths of Allegiance Act, violating the Westminster Confession of Faith. All of those enactments have the form that the oath is to be taken in within them. The form that the provincial judges across Canada is taking is false. It is not an accurate oath. It has no sanction in law. It's fraud to induce people to submit themselves to a false God, a God that makes laws every day in its legislature, in its parliament, for profit. The provinces are trading entities on the stock exchange as corporate businesses. So is the country known as Canada. So are these puffed up judges sitting on the bench. Their names are listed in all capital letters as trading entities on the New York Stock Exchange. The value of your case and the value of your bond is calculated as soon as your name appears on a docket, and they start billing the Treasury. The Treasury has the data book with all of your value in it, and it gets extracted off of your bond. This is fraud. If people don't complain about fraud, it's not fraud. So it's one thing to have knowledge. You can acquire it. It's there. Knowledge without wisdom is as a load of books on the back of an ass. The wisdom is, once you've got the knowledge of fraud is taking place, for Pete's sake, get out from in front of your computer games and go and complain. How you complain is up to you, but most importantly is that you complain loudly, continually, repetitively. If you want to save your faith and beliefs, if you have them, you better defend them, because they are under attack by these false oath judges and lawyers writing legislation for money. They want your energy, and they'll deceive you at all costs to get it. They'll put honorable in front of their name so you will trust them, and meanwhile they're just the lackeys for international corporations. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and I hope that you will think closely about your ability to complain about false oath judges, prosecutors, and lawyers that are occupying the offices all across Canada that are of the so-called government that your taxes pay for. I'm sure you don't like to believe that you're actually paying and supporting a fraud. So once you're exposed to the fact, the truth, the irrefutable evidence that this fraud is taking place, and you do nothing, go look in the mirror and write the word fool on your face. Because that's about the most appropriate thing you can apply to somebody who knows they're being subjected to a fraud, who knows they don't have to be subjected to a fraud, who knows that Christ gave his blood for the redemption from that fraud, and they're not exercising that faith and beliefs to get away from that fraud. If they don't do it, and yet they're still claiming they're Christians, they're not Christians, they're fools. They have no ability at all to exercise faith. Well, if you don't exercise faith, it's like not even having it. Faith without works is dead. That's what the exercise is. Those muscles are so weak they can't even lift themselves up off the computer table to go and do something? No. That's the system convincing you that you can't fight City Hall. Well, you can. Your faith and beliefs are a lot stronger if you're Christian than they are of a Sikh. The Sikh got the RCMP to pay him $10 million because he wouldn't hire him, because he wouldn't take off his turban. The Sikh doesn't have the King James Bible. He doesn't have the Queen. He doesn't have all those oaths on his side. All he had was his turban. And yet they stood up. They stood up for their kirpan, which is the knife they wear in their belt. The court said, you get to wear that to school and on airplanes. Why? Because they stood up. They wouldn't bow down. When you meet a Christian that you know that has stood up against the government and stood up for his faith and belief in the laws of God, please have him contact me. There are very few of them out there, so few, I haven't been able to find them. So if you know some of them that are willing to stand up and not bow down to a false god, that it's a provable fraud, please have them contact me. If it's you yourself, please contact me. owlmom@gmail.com. I look forward to speaking to you because more men and women that are aware need to unite and come together to defeat the fraud. You will never defeat fraud if you just say, oh, you can't beat him, and go back to the fraud, working for the fraud, being subjected to the fraud. You might as well just dig yourself a hole and crawl into it. That's about as much good as you're doing for the rest of the world, your relatives, and your children. Because if you know about a fraud and you don't do everything in your power to defeat that fraud, then you're part of the fraud and supporting it. So thank you so very much for your time. God bless.